Welcome, Zach Mayo, to Restitutio. Thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, pleasure to be here, Sean, and nice to chat.
To begin with, could you tell us a bit about yourself and your faith journey?
Yeah. So I'm 26. I live in New Zealand, on the other side of the world to you guys. I have a wife. We've been married for 7 years. And I have a little boy, Jethro. He's 1.5. And I've got another little boy on the way, actually, due September. So we're pretty busy at the moment, but that's pretty cool. In terms of my faith journey, it's I guess hard to pinpoint a day that I would say I became a Christian or a moment. I think for me it was more over a period of time and whatnot. But I used to go to these camps when I was a child, maybe from 8 to about 15, every holidays, school holidays, and it was a Christian based camp, and we used to go there, and they had all sorts of um, people come and speak. And I remember when I was there for one of the maybe the second or third time, I was only 8. I kind of that was when I don't know felt something, and I knew it was the truth, but it probably wasn't until I was about 15 or 16 that things really became my own faith rather than my parents or um, yeah my other friends, I guess. And so when I was about 15 or 16, actually, that's when I became a little bit more friends with my wife, Kayla. We began to date when I was 16, um, and her family really, I guess, changed my life or helped me to make my faith my own. And so it was about 15 or 16 that I'd say I really started to settle in that church and get involved in the worship team, and spend time reading my Bible for myself and things like that. So that was about 15, 16, and came out of high school, and my wife and we got married pretty young, so we were only 19 when we got married, and we moved around a little bit. We moved around in New Zealand. We were actually raft guides, so we worked in adventure tourism, doing rafting, mountaineering,
Wow.
skiing, all sorts of different things like that. So we traveled around a bit, and it was super fun. And we learned a lot about each other, and we got to appreciate God's creation. And it was awesome to sort of do that for a while.
And is it
Um,
very unusual to get married at 19 in New Zealand?
yeah, fairly. Yeah, like in terms of if you weren't a Christian at least, or had the sort of Christian values that we had, it's pretty uncommon.
Okay.
In our circle, it's not super uncommon because a lot of our friends are Christian, and they all have been married young. So, like for instance, Kayla's both her brothers were married fairly young, 19 and 20, and then a lot of our friends were married around that 20 mark. So, but 19, yeah, we were definitely the first out of our sort of friend group and
Yeah.
wanted to get married. But we're so glad we did. We're we're 7 years now, and it's just as good, if not better now, than it was when we got married. We so it's awesome. I love my wife, and she's definitely been a rock in my life. So um, she'll probably be hate me for ratting on her like that, but it's all good. So where was I? Yeah, we kind of got married young, and we're traveling around a bit, um, and traveling between different churches and things like this. And at this point, I should add, I was still a Trinitarian, or at least what you would say, like, I probably wouldn't have been able to tell you a whole lot about what I believed about who God was and who Jesus was then, but just by association, the churches I was with, the people who I talked to, I never had really a big issue with it because no one really um, had said much. Um, and so we sort of had been involved in these churches. But I when we came back from Queenstown, where we were living at the time. We moved back to Hamilton or Cambridge area to be closer to Kayla's family and my family. We actually took on a role. I took on a role in Kayla as well as the youth pastors at a church in Hamilton. We were the youth pastors at a church there for 3.5 years, which was pretty cool. And
what kind of church was that? Was that evangelical or
evangelical? Yeah, it was we call it the brethren movement, open brethren, but just pretty evangelical, reasonably conservative, yes, but it was just a pretty standard run-of-the-mill church. Nothing like it was nice to be at. We really enjoyed it there. We loved the people, very family orientated, about maybe 300 people at the church. So we got on really well and we really enjoyed it there. But obviously that had finished, and so I'm not sure if you want me to talk about, I can talk about a little bit of the journey of how I sort of came to
absolutely, please.
A Unitarian faith. Yeah. So I guess the Unitarian side of our faith came because of my wife's father. So my father-in-law, Vaughan, he went on a pretty big journey by himself about over a decade ago. He was actually challenged by, I think, his brother, who came to him and was like, "Hey, have you read the start of, Paul's epistles? And, do you see how they talk about Jesus and God and how they're different and whatnot?" Yeah. And so he started to go, "Hey, nah, you're crazy." Like, Vaughan, my father-in-law, said to his brother, "Nah, you're crazy. Like, Jesus is definitely God and the Trinity is true. Like, what are you talking about?" And so he went away, to look at it, study his Bible, and started asking some big questions. And he kind of came away from it going, "Man, I think Jesus might not actually be God, or there might be something here." And so he started looking into it a bit more, reading his Bible. And at this point, he didn't have any resources. He didn't have any anything like your podcast Restitutio at the time. Well, at least he didn't know about it.
Okay.
And he didn't have the other websites he hadn't found yet. And so he was sort of on his own journey, but he came to an understanding that was vastly different to what he had been brought up believing, which he will say now is just all God's glory. God opened his eyes to see that. Funny enough, his brother actually is still a Trinitarian, the one who brought it up. And
what?
Yeah, I know, crazy. Like, his brother was at seminary, I think, and was writing some paper or whatever, and that's what made him question it. But then, funny enough, Vaughan, the one who was telling him he's crazy, did end up becoming a Unitarian, and then his brother didn't. So it's an interesting story, but maybe one for another day. And so anyway, that was a while ago, and he just kind of was on that Unitarian train by himself for a long time, but he never lost that hope and that desire for fellowship, and he talked about it with anyone who would listen. He obviously lost his any position in all the churches he was at. He often would be kicked out because of his beliefs. Even people who were his friends would sort of stop talking to him, and he lost contact with a lot of people, which is pretty sad. But is not an uncommon theme, unfortunately, for Unitarians. When we do change our beliefs, it often comes with a cost, and so I respect and love my father-in-law for that, because it's pretty hard to do it even when you've got friends and family around you, let alone by yourself. So he was there, and when I came into the picture with Kayla, his daughter, and we were dating and whatnot, he was a real blessing. And he would challenge me on what I thought about the Trinity and what I thought about Jesus and who he was. I kind of gave him stock standard answers, oh, Jesus had two natures and he was fully God and fully man. That's how, there's these seemingly contradictory statements in the New Testament and whatnot, as we all do, I guess, when we're, you know, getting challenged with that stuff and we haven't thought about it a whole lot.
But you
And
probably
so that,
also would say, I'm sure that the experts have this figured out. I don't need to necessarily explain it or understand it. I can just agree with it, and my life just goes on, no problems, you
yeah,
know. But he
a
keeps he
hundred
keeps
percent.
he kept asking you,
Yeah.
well, how do you explain that? And
Mm.
so yeah, so what happened next?
Yeah. So, I mean, it was a long process. It definitely didn't happen quickly, but myself, I mean, I remember myself and him staying up till midnight when I was, over at their place just talking and reading scripture. And it was really eye-opening because he started to point out things I hadn't thought about, hey, Jesus is God. How could he die? And then, he'd say, well, if we really hold scripture as our sole authority of, truth and where we get, our truth from, then how can we start adding things in there that it's not saying? And he'd point out clear scriptures, John 17:3, things like that, that I hadn't really even thought about before. And so my mind definitely started to shift. So this was, a long time, but I would have still considered myself, I guess, a Trinitarian or some degree, but it wasn't very convincing, that's for sure. And so obviously, me and Kayla got married, we moved away from home and we weren't spending heaps of time around them and we didn't really think about it. And I think I just put it on the back burner. I just said, oh, it's not that important. It's not really worth me, because I knew what had happened with him and his churches. And so I kind of thought, well, I don't really want that to happen to me and Kayla. We want to go to our churches and be part of fellowships. And while we're moving around, we need that, community. And so we kind of, I mean, I'm not sure if I did it consciously or just didn't want to get into it or what, but we just never brought it up. We just kind of didn't talk about it. We didn't think about it. It was sort of there. And even when we came back to Hamilton and we got our jobs as youth pastors, Kayla and I we had some serious questions about, Trinity and the deity of Christ, but we still took the job at the church that where we went, and their statement of faith was a Trinitarian one. And we did tell some people who knew us, who were at the church, about our sort of feelings and our problems. And it was funny because their comments were, "Oh, you're young, you'll figure it. Like you'll come around."
Don't you hate it when they say that? It's
Yeah,
just like
yeah,
pat you on the head. Oh, you're just
yeah,
so young. You don't know
yeah, yeah.
anything.
You don't know exactly. And so we
Oh
kind of just
man.
were like, we kind of chuckled to ourselves and we're like, okay, we are young, but we knew our Bible fairly well. But again, I think the part that where it stopped was we just didn't think it was that important. We didn't think it was a real big issue. It wasn't an issue, at least worth bringing up and causing, any, I don't know, arguments over. We just thought, let's get
Right.
on with it. Let's just serve Christ in this church, and let's be the youth pastors here and serve the young people and do that. And so that was cool. We did that for 3.5 years. And this is sort of when things began to get more serious. As I was a youth pastor, we started, hearing messages at church by, our pastor. He'd preach, and or at least some of the elders who would preach. They would say things sometimes, and it would really ruffle our feathers. Things like, yeah, God died on the cross for you. Things like that. That would, just one-off statements, and we go, man, is that really what the Bible teaches, or does the Bible teach that God sent His Son who died
Yeah.
for you? And so we this happened over those few years, and then by the end of the 3.5 years we were youth pastoring, our son Kayla was pregnant, and we were getting close to him being born, and we kind of really said to ourselves, we need to make a decision on this. We need to really decide, hey, is this actually important, and is it worth doing something about? And so we both spent a good chunk of time together, studying the word, really asking ourselves, is it that important? And then I actually remember Vaughn, he had found all your podcasts and whatnot by now, and he sent me an episode, I think it was by a guy, Chuck, and it was, Does Truth Really Matter? I
Yeah.
don't know if you remember that. It was a
Chuck
while ago, I
Whitlock.
think.
Yeah.
Yep, that's the one. And that episode he sent to me, and I didn't want to watch it. I didn't want to watch it because I knew what he was going to say. I knew what he was going to, and I was scared. So, but I did end up watching it, and it was a real blessing because he pointed out, like if we're gonna, suppress the truth because it benefits us, or we're not going to speak up and talk about something because it benefits us, is that really what we as Christians should do? And how much does it matter for our journey? If we're going to say we believe something here but then not act on it, yeah, do we really believe it? And so anyway, it was a real challenge, and we ended up talking to a couple of our elders, who were our friends, and they initially weren't really that shocked. It was an interesting conversation. They kind of thought, oh, maybe this could work. You could probably stay at the church and just change the statement of faith, because we said, look, we can't continue on with the statement of faith. We need, we want to be honest and upfront about it.
Right.
And so we thought, oh, that was a really good conversation. We laid out everything we believed and where we had come to. But then they went away and talked to the other elders and our pastor. And within 2 or 3 days, we lost our job. We
Oh,
didn't go back to church.
that quickly.
Yeah, it was
Wow.
that quick. Yeah. So, I mean, they had said, look, we're putting you on hold, is how they put it, or we're taking you off all responsibilities. So
So
I
they
wasn't
didn't
like,
try to persuade you. They just fired you.
no, they sort of did. They came in and like our pastor came in and had one conversation with us.
Oh, okay. So he did try to
Yeah,
give you his
so
case.
yeah, he brought John one, um, and he brought a couple other little passages that we had already thought about, and we'd studied for a long time, and we told him what we thought about those, and he kind of just, we asked him a few questions that he couldn't answer as well. We showed him a few
Oh,
passages that
okay.
he went away going,
He might have
oh,
felt intimidated then at that point because
yeah,
what he
maybe.
thought were his slam dunk verses or real solid evidence,
Hmm.
you were able to sweep away, but then
Yeah,
yours, he didn't have any
no,
defense. Yeah, so
and
um,
that's right. What we
yeah.
we we were pretty shocked, that, because it all happened within a couple of days, so it was all real fresh and raw, and at the time, and now obviously we can think back on it, but he came in, and he wanted to just convince us that we were wrong, rather than listen to us and hear what we had to say. And so after that conversation, that he obviously went back to the elders, and they had a meeting and said, oh, well, we're going to stand Zach and Kayla down from all responsibilities. He can't preach, they can't teach, they won't go to youth group anymore, they won't run it. um like, basically said, you're stopping. And then it was, I mean, it wasn't that we were necessarily fired on that spot, but we were taken off all of from our job. Basically, we couldn't do it. And they said, until you basically change your mind, you can't go back, is sort of the conversation and how it happened. And we were like, look, we're not going to change our minds on this overnight. And in all honesty, we're actually pretty solid. We've kind of come to a landing. We've been looking at this for a year to like between 6 months and a year, really, really in depthly. And I know that's not super long, because I know Dale Tuggy took, what, 10 years or something, 20
Yeah.
years to do it. So a year to 6 months isn't heaps, but it was enough for us to go, hey, we think there's a problem here. And to have enough evidence actually to, put it forward to people pretty convincingly, or at least, like, for ourselves, we were pretty convinced that this was the truth. And so we parted ways with the church. They, it was it wasn't the most horrendous. We left with a few people who we're still in contact with, but in most part, we haven't kept, a lot of the relationships we had. A lot of people don't want to talk about it. It's sort of an awkward thing, and yeah, we were pretty surprised actually with the lack of contact that we had from people in the church afterwards. And I think I'm not sure we didn't go to our church services because the week after this all happened, the first sermon back was is the Trinity true? And then the next 2 weeks were Jesus's humanity and then Jesus's deity. So they did like a 3-part series that like the following 3 weeks on the Trinity and is Jesus God. And we were just like, oh, what a kick in the guts.
Yeah.
They didn't want to hear it. We asked to go before the elders and have a meeting with the elders and sort of lay out why we've come to this position, and they didn't want to hear from us. They just said, nah, we're okay. We know what we believe in. Yeah, we're not going to change. So it was a bit sad, but we throughout it all had a real peace, and that was something that we give to God, and we thank him for that, because we knew the Spirit was definitely working in our lives at this point, because Kayla was 9 months pregnant, and we were losing our job as youth pastors, and we had all of the stuff going on, and yeah, we weren't stressed, we weren't super anxious about it. We knew this was the right move to make, and yeah, we were super stoked about it. So that sort of brings us to about.
Let me pause you there. When you were in that year of study, did you read any books that were helpful?
Yeah, yep, we did. So Jeff Dibble, his book had, I think, it wasn't out for long when we got it. It hadn't been out for long, I think, then. I'm not actually sure though. So I read Jeff Dible's book, Christ Before Creeds. I think that one was probably the easiest book that I read, and it was the one that I found the most helpful to just, I don't know, it laid out everything so clearly and easy. It wasn't big language, there wasn't much jargon in there that I couldn't understand. So that was a great book. I read Anthony Buzzard's book, The Self-Inflicted Wound.
Okay. That's a little more technical.
Yes, that was. So that one I read it, but yeah, definitely a little bit more technical. And I found it very helpful for certain texts, because he goes a lot more in depth into his exegesis and whatnot. And so those were really helpful. I read what other books did I read? Oh, I read Keegan Chandler's book, The God of Jesus.
Very good.
That one there, if I could choose one book to keep, it would probably be Keegan's book, because the history in the beginning of the book, the first half of it, I found super helpful. Because it's a question we all have to answer. Well, how the heck did we get where we are? How do we get to the Trinity being the dominant view? And so when he laid that out in the first half, it makes it so much more easy to go, okay, that's how we got there. So what does the Bible mean if we actually go back and read it with the Jewish lens, or that non-Greek philosophical lens that a lot of us still have today, that we read the Bible with. So that was really a really good book. I've got a few other. Greg Dible's book. They never told me this in church.
Yep. That gets into other doctrines too.
Yes, exactly. So not just that, and I haven't really mentioned this as well, but when we going through all of our journey and whatnot, and since from then till today, we've changed our minds on a lot of things. For instance, I've read your book, The Kingdom, and man, the gospel of the kingdom sort of ideas have changed how I see a lot of scripture. I definitely, and that has come through from seeing a lot of Unitarians sort of going that direction. I was going, hey, I wonder what there is here. And so yeah, it's been real eye-opening, and a few other things, conditional immortality. I was, my understanding of hell and whatnot. So all of these things have been challenged.
Have you come across Warren Prestige's book? Because he is a fellow countryman of yours.
Yes, I have. I've actually, yeah. So Warren actually, so for the last year, we went to a church in Hamilton that is sort of half Unitarian, half Trinitarian. They've got a mix of people. But Warren actually came and spoke at that church. So I met him in person, and I've got a copy of his book. I think it was at Life, Death, and Hell or something like that.
Destiny,
I can't. Life,
life,
Death,
death,
Life,
and destiny. Yeah,
Destiny. That's the one. Yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, yeah. So they've all been super helpful in sort of my understanding, as well as your podcast, Dale Tuggy's podcast. I'm last year, end of 2023, I was in the 0.5% of top listeners for Restitutio. I'm pretty sure I listened to like 5,000 minutes of
Oh
Restitutio.
boy.
Yeah, it was I'm a builder, so I can chuck my headphones on at work when I'm
Okay.
doing work, and I can just listen, which is so cool. But I listen to pretty much every one of your classes. I like the One God class, and I think your theology class, which is you did a while ago. So I've listened to pretty much every episode since. So yeah, it's been such a blessing. I just wanted to say thanks.
And
And
so, yeah, you're welcome. So glad to hear it. It's sometimes when you're putting the work in, you think to yourself, "Is this doing any good?"
yeah, yeah. I,
And
oh,
especially when you're editing audio, when you're editing, that's when it hits me the most. And I'm like,
yeah,
"This is just terrible."
yeah.
What's the point of my life? But that is encouraging to hear.
Yeah,
Um,
no, it
yeah,
has been such a blessing, and yeah, have learned so much. And I mean, look, I'm not saying there are things I still disagree with a lot of people, and I'm open to talking about it. But I think what I love about Restitutio, and especially the Unitarian community, by and large, is that most people are willing to talk about things that in past churches that I've been
yeah,
involved in, they're just not. People don't want to challenge the status quo. They want to just have their, you know, stock standard answers, and they don't want to think about them.
yeah.
And so that's something that has, I've had to learn, and it's a challenge. You don't like you don't like being questioned. You don't like being put on the examining table. But I think it's been great for me, and I know that Restitutio and the books that I've read have been real help. Oh, and
Yeah,
another book that I did read was Dale Tuggy's book as well. I think just the Trinity.
what is the Trinity?
What is the Trinity? Yeah,
Yeah.
that was
Yeah,
another
it's a
good.
great little introduction book to the philosophical side of the
Mm,
Trinity. He's so
yeah,
funny in that book because
yeah,
he plays coy like up until, I don't know, chapter 8, chapter 9. Then
yeah,
he's like, by the way, I don't believe in the Trinity at all.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's just so
Sort of
funny.
sneaks it in there at the end. That he kind of tells you
Yeah.
all these problems that they've
Yeah, it's
got,
like,
and
yeah,
then he goes,
here's all the problems. And you like, I think the honest or the sort of uninformed reader is probably thinking like, all right, he's going to come out with a really good solution for how this all makes sense in the end.
yeah,
And instead he's
yeah,
just like, yeah, there's no
mm.
solution.
Yeah, just throw it away. Yeah, I love it.
Oh
Yeah,
man.
and
Yeah.
listening to it, I listen to it on audiobooks as well. I bought it
Yeah.
on yeah, and yeah, I love listening. Dale's voice, he's so I don't know, he's pretty monotone, but it's so relaxing sometimes
He has
listening
a
to it.
nice deep voice, doesn't he?
Yeah, yeah, it's
Yeah.
good. I like it.
Very good.
So yeah.
I was going to ask you to continue from where you had left off.
Hmm.
You had just mentioned going to this other church that has some Unitarians in it. Did that take you a while to find, or were you doing just home church, or what were you doing after
Yeah. Yeah.
leaving?
So it was actually crazy. I mean, we had finished up at the church we were at, and we were like, man, what next? And Kayla's family, so Kayla's father, Unitarian, and Kayla's brothers are both Unitarian as well. Now that obviously they went on a similar journey to us, Kayla's mother. And so we were like, man, what are we going to do? And we actually got in contact with Greg Dybel.
Okay.
And we asked him, hey, do you know any churches in New Zealand, Hamilton, Cambridge area that are Unitarian or would accept Unitarians at least? And so he put us onto a church in Hamilton. He said, yeah, I know these guys. I'm actually coming over to New Zealand to do, to speak and do some teaching over there in a couple months. We'll so we went along there, and a couple months later he came over and we met him, and that was such a blessing. So we were able to, find this church that at least allowed us to come. They wouldn't put themselves out there as Unitarian. They wouldn't even put themselves out there as Trinitarian. They just sort of either or. And the churches, we really enjoyed going there for a time, and there was some, they had a lot of guest speakers in, and it was nice to be, I guess, accepted and welcomed to come to a place. And we, after a while, did struggle to stay there because of they didn't have a pastor. They didn't, and all the preachers that were coming in were people from, like, pastors from other churches, or seminary professors, or like university professors who were all Trinitarian, and so often we would actually still get hounded for our beliefs, or when we questioned them, or when we asked about, hey, why do you think that? We'd sort of get told off for bringing it up. And it was a real, after a time, we just felt a little bit like, hey, maybe this isn't the church for us. And so we actually aren't at that church anymore. But it was a real blessing at the start, because we got to meet a few people that we didn't know existed, because we were pretty much by ourselves at this point as Unitarians, in a world of Trinitarians. We were able to meet a few people and have some really cool conversations, and be really encouraged by that. So anyway, over that next year, it was a little bit messy, but now we've kind of we're kind of doing our own thing at home with our family, and we myself and my wife are planning on, we're doing a bit of a Bible study. So we're sort of in the process of beginning that up with a few of the other people from Hamilton and family. Obviously, it's a little bit difficult when my wife's pregnant and we've got a little son, so we're trying to balance work and life and all of these other things. But it's been a bit of a struggle, I'm not going to lie, to find fellowship and find community that is willing to affirm a Unitarian faith. We're pretty isolated, but there is a really cool number of people spread around New Zealand who I've been able to get in contact over the last year with.
Yeah, let's talk about that. You applied to the UCA to run a conference, and what inspired you to do that, and what's it been like as far as the planning?
Yeah. So, like I was saying, with the church and kind of being in and out of groups and whatnot, we felt pretty isolated. And so we found the UCA during that year, and I was super excited when I found the UCA. I didn't even know it existed until a year ago, or maybe a little bit more than that now. And I became a member, and I saw there were other people in New Zealand on there, and so I started reaching out and messaging them, and trying to just introduce myself, which was pretty cool, and talk to a few people. But there was still this desire in me to have something happen. Everyone's separated, everyone's quite spread out throughout New Zealand, and I was said to myself, man, what would it be like, or what could we do to bring everyone together? How can we get these Unitarians who are spread out throughout New Zealand and meet up? And when I was on the UCA comments on the UCA page, I saw that you guys had brought out a new page. It was international conferences, or something. It was a new thing that you had put up, and I said, man, that sounds exactly like what we need. A group meeting where anyone could come. Where just one God believers can come together and hear some good teaching, have some fellowship, and be together. So I pretty much immediately just messaged the UCA, just emailed. I think it was Stacy, who I was talking with initially. And it was really great. She said, hey, look, yeah, we'd be happy to sort of do something, but here's some information that we need first. So I started filling out some of those things, and then I believe it was a little while later. I think there was obviously with time differences and whatnot, things probably got muddled up, but I didn't reply for a while. And then when I finally got back, I believe you got in touch with me, and
Yeah.
we had a bit of a
And
phone
then
call,
I got
right?
busy and I handed you off to Brandon.
Brandon, yeah,
And
that's
then
right.
and then
Yeah.
now I'm back, but that's the way life is. You go through
Yeah,
these periods where seasons and so forth.
yeah, that's
Uh,
right.
so talk about how you've been able to get in touch with other Unitarian Christians in New Zealand and make connections and invite them.
Mm. Yeah. So I just started asking people. So I got into obviously emailed everyone on the UCA page that was from New Zealand, and started asking them, if they'd be interested in having a phone call or meeting up if they were close by. And so I did that. And then when I met them, I'd ask, hey, do you know anyone else? Do you know any other Unitarians around? And they would pass me on to someone else. And so I'd get their phone number or their email address and send an email or a text and
That's old
ask if they
school
were,
right there, man. That's
yeah.
some serious phone work.
Yeah, so I mean, it was a real pleasure actually, because I had some phone calls with quite a few different people all throughout New Zealand, and I mentioned to them, hey, I'm thinking about organizing this conference. The guys from America have said, yeah, we're keen to help you run this. We'd be keen to do something, and but how many people were interested? So I started getting on the phones and talking, and everyone seemed really keen. I talked to probably about 35-ish different people over throughout New Zealand, and they all were really positive. They were super excited to hear from me, and I heard a lot of their journeys as well. And it's been really cool. A guy down in the South Island of New Zealand, Ken. Um, he was it was an awesome. We chatted for like I think 2 hours or more, just on the phone one evening, and it was awesome. I was able to talk about things, and we talked about our Unitarian faith and how we both sort of came to it. But then we also talked about other theologies and different things, and it was so cool. And so I mentioned to them about a UCA conference here in New Zealand, and it was overwhelming. That they were all very positive, very happy and excited, and just cool, keen to hear more about
Yeah.
it. So I kind of left them there, unfortunately, because I said, hey, look, I'll do some organizing and we'll do that. And a lot of the people I haven't really talked to much again, apart from a few emails or texts, just to say, hey, things are happening still. But we made a bit of a planning committee. So out of the people who I talked to, I asked about 5 people if they would be interested in forming a bit of a planning committee. So a guy, Matthew, he's from Wellington. A couple, Michael and Yvonne, they're from sort of central North Island. And then myself and my wife, Kayla. We started a planning committee, and we kind of met together to begin, and we found a venue, and we had some dates that we proposed to the board. And we sort of worked a bit together. And we even got Jeff Dybel. He's sort of come on board now, which is awesome. He's going to sort of be our Australian liaison, because we'll
Oh,
talk about
good.
this soon. But he wants to, he's keen to be involved. And we would love for Australians to come over for the conference. And I know initially we thought it was going to be a New Zealand conference, and I hadn't really thought about Australia at the start, but then my wife, mentioned to me, hey, what do we do about Australia? We've got Greg and Jeff both over there. I wonder if they'd be able to help us maybe try and talk to some people from Australia. So they're going to help us promote that once we get the website up and running. So we've got all the info. We've got a date. We've got a venue. So it's going to be in Cambridge in November. That's the 22nd to the 24th of November. And so it's locked in, date and venue, but we're just waiting to get the website up and running so people can register, and we can start pointing them there and have all the other information, I guess, up there for them. But yeah, it's been cool to plan it and kind of get some more details locked in, and we're just waiting to, I guess, put it up online.
Yeah. Yeah. I think this is exciting. Uh, I am curious though. How do New Zealanders think about Australians? Are you guys? I'm sure you have some competition, but
Yeah.
like, do they think of you as like snobbish, or do you think of them as just sort of like country folk, or like how does it work? Because I have
Um,
no idea.
yeah, I'm sure there's some rivalry. You know, some people don't like Australians. I mean, I can speak for myself and people I know. I guess they're like we kind of see them just as like brothers,
Okay.
or
Yeah.
maybe cousins is probably a better,
Okay.
but no, we when there's not a big rivalry, apart from sports. If there's sports and we're watching a football game, like soccer, football, or rugby, especially rugby, if it's New Zealand, Australia, then you start to get a bit of a bit of a rivalry going.
Yeah.
And then for that 80 minutes of a rugby game, you're arch enemies. So it's
Okay. Oh,
yeah,
that's funny.
but we now like we've got plenty of friends over in Australia, especially Greg and Jeff and stuff, and we love them, and we just
Yeah.
we're kind
Yeah.
of the little brother. It is a little bit painful sometimes when people just say, "Oh, New Zealanders are just Australians," but
Uh,
separated a little bit of water. So, because maybe we get a bit angry when people say that, but
yeah.
nah, otherwise,
You probably
um,
want to stand up and say, this is a country. We are a whole country, two islands.
yeah,
We matter.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think so. I heard I don't know if it was on YouTube or something like that. Someone was saying it for New Zealanders to be called Australians is like Canadians to be called Americans.
Yeah.
So if that makes any more sense to you guys,
Yeah.
it's just similar.
Yeah. No, that communicates. Well, speaking of Canadians and Americans, and our European friends as well, um, is this conference open to those people to come too? Are you looking to
Yeah,
bring in internationals? Is travel pretty easy to New Zealand? Talk about that a little bit.
yeah. I mean, absolutely. I guess it goes without saying, we'd love as many people to come as we can get. The whole point and the goal behind this is to, I guess, connect with other Unitarians, and so wherever they come from, who far and wide, is they're welcome. We would love for obviously Australians and New Zealanders to be involved highly, but if there were people from the States or from Europe who wanted to go on a bit of a holiday
Yeah.
and time it to come for our summer in November, end of November. December's pretty lovely time of year. It's getting into summer for us, so we'd love to have those people come. I was also thinking that countries like Fiji or the Philippines or those south southern hemisphere countries might be a little bit more inclined to come this way rather than having trying to get to the UK or the States for a
Or
conference
even
somewhere.
Hawaii is
Yeah.
probably closer to you than me.
Yeah, it's on the other side of the whole country, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So we would love to see people come from all over. In terms of getting to New Zealand, New Zealand is probably the furthest away most people can get from where they live. It's we are down the bottom of the world here, but it's not horrendous to get to. I actually don't know what the prices and stuff are these days to get to New Zealand, but in terms of a country to get into, it's fairly easy to come on a bit of a holiday here.
Oh,
We
good.
haven't got huge checks. I think getting into the States is quite an ordeal for many people, but coming here I think is a bit easier, is what
Oh,
I've heard.
good.
So that's pretty cool. But it is a fair flight, I believe, from LA to New Zealand is like I think it's like for 16 hours or something like that in a plane. So yeah,
It's a long ride, but
yeah,
hey, your country is such a, a diverse geographically interesting place. You have
mm,
these volcanoes, don't you have like ice and glaciers,
yeah,
and
yeah,
the Lord of the Rings was filmed there, right?
yeah.
So
Yep.
you could run into a hobbit, who knows?
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
But they preserved that set, didn't they?
Yeah. So we actually only live about 20 minutes from the Hobbiton set. So, and I was saying before, we worked in adventure tourism. My wife's first job out of high school was actually working at the Hobbiton set in Matamata, which is yeah, that you can go for a tour there. You can
Yeah.
see the Hobbiton village and the Shire and whatnot. So it's yeah, there's so many cool things, and yeah, like the South Island is full of mountains and glaciers, and it's pretty rugged down there in some parts. Obviously, there's still cities and in the nicer spots, Christchurch and whatnot. But there's also yeah, just amazing walks, rivers that are crystal clear. And I'm trying to sell New Zealand here, aren't I? And yeah, I love New Zealand. It's an amazing country to live in. And we're blessed to be pretty free to be able to have different religions and different thoughts, and so yeah, we'd love for people to come and see what we're all about here, and come and meet us, and
Okay.
yeah, check out some pretty cool countryside as well. When you're here, if you love Lord of the Rings, definitely yeah,
Yeah.
come up and see that. Yeah, well, and I mean, this is something that we've talked about as a planning committee as well, and we'd love to host people when they're here. Is if people from overseas are planning on coming and do want to get in touch with us, because I'm planning on taking some time off work around the time to um, maybe take people and do some trips out to see some mountains or see
Oh, very
some
nice.
things like that. So if people are interested in coming, um, you know, I would love to help them see the country a little
Yeah,
bit.
and you
And
have experience with going to a lot of these places as well.
yeah,
That's very good.
exactly. So I'm happy to do that, and it's something that we want to put out there. So, and that's, I guess, that when registrations are open and we can get an idea of who's coming, I can start to make a little bit more of a plan of what we're going to do, and see when people are going to fly over. Maybe people will come for a couple of weeks, so we might get a time to do a few things
Yeah,
as well.
very good. And are you looking for presenters currently, or you have the lineup fully
Yeah.
done, or what's the
No,
story there?
so the plan is once registrations are open, we were going to advertise it, yes, this, but we are going to do a bit of a call for papers, kind of like the UCA America, like the USA one, but it's going to be not papers but presentations.
Okay.
So the plan will be, you know, come and present something, or put it on to us as the planning committee, and we'll sort of have a look at it, and if it we'll choose the ones, I guess, that we feel will be the most beneficial, and I guess the best. If we get that many, I'm not sure how many we get. We might only get a few. So that would be pretty cool. However, we are planning on having Dale Tuggy and Mark Kane both coming over for the conference. At least I think they've said that at this point. But I'm not sure if I can say that, or yet I don't know if it's all confirmed on their half. So I'm hoping they come. That'd be great. And yeah, so we'll hopefully get them to present something
Yes,
that
and
would
Mark
be
Kane has a whole recording um, setup,
yeah,
and so he can bring that. I think he's bringing that to the UK
UK.
conference, and he'll be able to test it on them there.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
if there are any problems by the time he gets to New Zealand, assuming he's able to make it, then yeah, I mean, we'll be
Mm.
able to record and then add the presentations with your beautiful Kiwi accents. We Americans, we're fascinated by your accent. It's just like it tickles our ear,
Yeah, yeah.
So
Oh man, it's
and
funny because we think the same about the like English people. We think, oh man, they've got such a smart accent. They sound
yeah,
so
yeah,
clear.
yeah, we're very impressed
And
with
then,
the English as well.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And then yeah, we just think we sound like, I don't know, farmers, just pretty rugged and
Yeah.
carefree. But no, that's interesting to hear.
Yeah, I remember interviewing Warren Prestige, and no, it wasn't him. It was I think it was David Burge. He died some years ago. and his accent was so thick,
Yeah.
Zach. I tell you, I could not. There were times where I had no idea what he said,
Yeah.
just no idea at all. And then I just went on to the next question. I'm like, well, let's just hope that it was good, whatever he said there, because
Yeah.
I have no idea. With you, I think it's pretty easy
Yeah.
for me at
I
least.
No, I think the further south you go in New Zealand, the thicker the accent seems to get. So
Okay.
if yeah, I'm up kind of middle of the North Island, Cambridge, which is a couple hours south of Auckland, if people know where that is.
Yeah.
But yeah, the further south you go, especially if you kind of right at the bottom, Invercargill, that Southland area is pretty thick. They speak with a pretty thick accent.
How,
Some people,
can you impersonate it? What does it sound like?
no, I can't. I can't
No.
even.
Okay.
Can't even do it. Yeah, yeah. No, I'd just make it fool myself. So I'm not even gonna try. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Okay. So once again, the conference is November 22nd to the 24th.
Yes.
For my American brothers and sisters, I do want to just inform you that this is not going to conflict with Thanksgiving. So if you have family plans for Thanksgiving, which is a distinctly American holiday, you
Yeah.
can get back in time. It's not till the 28th this year for us. It's a confusing holiday because it changes dates every year. But
Oh well.
yeah, you could easily go to New Zealand for however long and then even stay another couple days afterwards and make it home in time for Thanksgiving. Because I think, if I'm not wrong about this, Zach, when you fly home, you get a day back.
Yeah.
You can
Yeah.
live
It's
the
like
whole
it's
same day twice.
yeah. That's right. Yeah. So I believe that we are 19 hours ahead of you, or 20 hours ahead of you right now. So it's 10 o'clock or nearly 10 a.m. in the morning here. What time is it for you?
It's almost 6 p.m.
Yeah.
on
So
Friday, and it's
yeah. So
Saturday for you, right?
yeah, that's right. Saturday
Yeah,
morning for me. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So
So
that's nearly a like a good chunk of time there. If you flew from back to the States, it would be like you
one way
never
when
left.
you fly, you lose a day, and one way you
Yeah,
fly, you get it back, or most of a
you get it
day.
back.
So
That's right. That's right.
yeah, it's a funny thing about the
Yeah,
rotation of the Earth and all that.
yeah,
All
yeah.
right.
The
Well,
jet lag.
anything else we should cover as far as your story or this conference or other stuff that's going on?
Hmm.
I
Not
suppose
really.
we'll
Like,
mention just before I turn it over to you. Let's mention that the information will be on UnitarianChristianAlliance.org. I
yeah,
have spoken to the person who's putting it up, and it should be up by the time this podcast is out. So
cool.
if that is the case, then it should already be there.
Yeah,
UnitarianChristianAlliance.org, and then there's a menu on the top that has events, and under events is 2024 conferences. So it should
yeah.
be there.
Perfect.
Sorry,
Yeah,
Zach. What else were you going to say?
yeah. Like that's the main thing. We want to get this out, spread far and wide to as many people who we can get, so they know it's happening. And that's the key, is just word of mouth, letting people know. So if you know anyone in New Zealand, people listening, let them know. Let them know that this is going on. I might have talked to them, and I might have got their email address, and I might be letting them know, but there's a chance I haven't. I will say this: the Christadelphian community in New Zealand, I've got in touch with a couple people, but if you have contacts, especially Christadelphians, if you guys have any contacts with people in New Zealand, let them know as well, because we would love to have Christadelphian community be involved as well, because I know they're a massive involvement in the UK and in the US conferences, and we would love to see them be a part of it here. So for any Christadelphians listening, please get in touch with me or your friends and let them know this is happening. If you are from New Zealand and you're a Christadelphian, feel free to get in touch with me. I don't know if I can put my email or something in show notes or whatever,
Yeah,
how that works.
no problem.
But yeah, we could do something like that so people can get in touch with me if they want to. But otherwise, we're just really excited that this is happening, and we want to spread the message of who God is and who Jesus is, and we want to have fellowship with other like-minded people. So that's what this conference is about. Just beginning something here in New Zealand, and we're not sure where it'll take us. But
Yeah,
we're
it's an
kind of
exciting thought. I mean, it could cause some new connections and
Mm.
perhaps even some coalescing of isolated individuals into house churches at, as a starting point at least, and maybe
Mm.
even larger, more, sustainable churches with time.
Yeah,
So
and exactly. God
that would be
willing,
great.
that would happen. We'd love to see that. So, yeah, get in touch if you have any questions as well. We're gonna email myself and I believe Jeff. We're gonna get in touch with people. I'll try and get in touch with people from New Zealand. I think Jeff and Greg Dybel, they're gonna do a bit of sort of networking in Australia to let people know what's happening. And so for anyone who's in New Zealand or Australia who is listening, hopefully you'll get an email from us soon. If you're part of the UCA like members, then we should be able to send you an email from
Right.
there. If you're listening to this and you're not a member on the UCA, I would encourage you to jump on there and sign up because it's so much easier to
Yeah.
find people and
And
to
you can just get a free membership if you don't want to contribute financially, and you just get a free membership. If you want to contribute financially, that's great too, because then we can underwrite some of the expenses for these kinds of things, which
yes.
is helpful as well.
I,
Just before we, sorry, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say it's worth mentioning that the conference is free to come to. There's no cost. We've actually been able to got some generous people involved as well as the UCA who are going to help with the costs of things, and we've done it in a way that's going to keep this conference down. So it's going to be free to come to. The cost you'll have to find is obviously your travel to get here and then your accommodation for the weekend. But in terms of lunch and dinner and everything else that goes on and for the conference,
Venue itself,
uh,
yeah.
the venue itself, all of those things, they will be covered by us. So if yeah, that was a
Now that's
worry.
hospitality, Zach. You might have outdone the English on that one.
Yeah. Nah, so anyway, we're trying to make it as easy for people to come as possible because we know that it can be a cost,
Yeah.
and we know it can be a bit, but we want to see people come, and maybe in a few years to come we might change it. We might, maybe next year we'll do it in Australia, and it's easier for Australians to come along to, and we might travel over to see you guys, and vice versa. Who knows what the future holds, but
Yeah.
at least at this stage we're just rolling with something, and we'll see where it goes.
Very good. Well, thanks for talking with me today. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, no worries, Shauna. It's been a pleasure. Thanks.